Good evening and thank you for staying with us right here in Voice of the People 90.3 FM. My name is Esther Nwachuku. This is the World News and these are the top stories. NLC President fires President Bola Tinubu. SDP Adibaya chastises Tinubu on economic policies. Senate summons NDLEA over clash with Senator Ashiru. Federal government takes stand and suit seeking to declare EFCC illegal. Federal government probes Gulf of Guinea as key route for arms trafficking. Details now. The news begins with the president of the Nigeria Labour Congress, Joe Ajaro, calling for an immediate reversal of the latest fuel price increase in the country. Ajaro, in a statement today, urged President Bola Tinubu to reverse the fuel price hike, noting that the increases initiated by the current administration since coming to power have not produced any positive result or impact on the citizens. The NLC also called out President Tinubu, noting that his government is becoming notorious for only fuel price increases without commensurate capacity of Nigerians or mitigatory measures. He said the policies of the Tinubu government have only made Nigerians poorer. Ajaro went further to question why the Nigerian National Petroleum Company Limited is the one fixing fuel prices in the country when the government has already declared that the sector has been deregulated and it is the interaction of market forces that will determine petrol prices in the country. Meanwhile, the 2023 presidential candidate of the Social Democratic Party, Adewale Adebayo, has accused the government of President Bola Tinubu of mismanaging Nigeria's economy. According to him, some of the policies introduced by the Tinubu government are not fit for the Nigerian economy. Speaking during an interview recently via Daily Post, Adebayo criticized some of the policies of the current administration, including the removal of petrol subsidies and the flotation of the naira, noting that it has brought more hardship to the citizens. He also lamented that a planned increase in tax to be paid by citizens while the government is not fulfilling its own responsibilities is unacceptable. The former SDP presidential candidate said what the Tinubu government is doing can be likened to squeezing the juice out of oranges. Adebayo submitted in quote, "Anybody who tells you that we should remove subsidy from an underdeveloped economy where productivity is low had F9 in economics," end quote. In another development, the Nigerian Senate has extended an invitation to the National Drug Law Enforcement Agency to provide justification for the allegations made against Deputy Senate Leader Oyinlola Ashiru. The Senate also established an ad hoc committee to oversee the matter and report back to the lawmakers within 1 week. This was announced after the lawmakers' closed-door session today by Senate President Godswill Akpabio. Akpabio questioned why the NDLEA had to wait for Senator Ashiru to make a point on the Senate floor about the corruption in the agency before digging up the allegation of drug issues against the lawmaker. The Senate President noted that the utterances of the senators during plenary are not subjects of debate by outsiders as they are covered by immunity. Reiterating the confidence of the Senate in Ashiru, Akpabio described the Kwara South lawmaker as a gentleman who doesn't even take alcohol. He noted that the Senate must take the matter with the NDLEA seriously and call the agency to order because injury to one is an injury to all. The resolutions of the Senate today were sequel to a point of order raised by Senator Ashiru during the day's plenary. He moved a motion of urgent national importance, citing Orders 9, 10, 41, and 52 of the Senate Standing Rules. You would recall Ashiru had last Wednesday in the Senate during a debate on a bill seeking to establish a National Institute for Drug Awareness and Rehabilitation, said the NDLEA is corrupt and already compromised. However, the NDLEA on Monday said it recovered illicit drugs from the personal residence of the Kwara South senator, suggesting that the lawmaker's recent criticism of the agency stems from personal vendetta rather than genuine concern concern for the national interest. The NDLEA chairman, Brigadier General Buba Marwa, retired, countered the senator's claims. He stated that Ashiri's remarks were not motivated by altruism, but rather by a desire to deflect attention from the agency's findings. In a quick response, however, Senator Ashiri, in a statement through his special assistant, Olaito Adeoju, challenged the NDLEA to charge the culprits allegedly found in his house to court. He said the exposure of the corruption in the NDLEA is responsible for the agency's attacks on the lawmaker. In a recent development, the federal government has called on the Supreme Court to dismiss its lawsuit filed by 19 state governments seeking to declare the operations of the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission illegal. Represented by the Attorney General of the Federation and Minister of Justice, Prince Lateef Fagbemi, a senior advocate of Nigeria, the government challenged the validity of the suit today, arguing that it poses a threat to the ongoing efforts to combat corruption and financial crimes across Nigeria. During the proceedings, the AGF pointed to a preliminary objection and counter affidavit submitted by the federal government on October 18, which questioned the legal grounds of the state government's claims. Fagbemi emphasized that the EFCC was established in accordance with Section 15, Subsection 5 of the 1999 Constitution as amended, countering the plaintiff's argument that the EFCC's act stemmed from an international convention that was not properly domesticated in Nigeria. Moreover, he disclosed that it comes on a day that 3 states of the Federation pulled out all the legal action. The states include Anambra, Adamawa, and Ebonyi, announcing their decisions to withdraw from the matter shortly after it was called up for hearing. The Attorney General of Anambra State, Professor Sylvia Ifemeji, told the Apex Court that the state was no longer willing to be a part of the case, which was originally instituted by Kogi State. She disclosed that the state's withdrawal notice was dated October 20. Likewise, Adamawa State, through its own AG, Mr. J.R. Jingi, notified the Apex Court that it had, on October 14, also filed a notice of withdrawal. Ebonyi State, which was initially listed as the 18th plaintiff, through its counsel, Mr. Ikenna Inwidagu, equally applied to withdraw from the suit. You're currently listening to the World News at 6 on Voice of the People, 90.3 FM. We'll take a very short break. When we return, we'll head into a news analysis segment. This time around, I actually have joining me via the telephone Barrister Fred Nzako. He's a political, national, and social affairs commentator. Also, I have right here in the studio Mr. Chukwuma Okoro, the author of The Future of Politics and also a political, national, and social commentator. Do you stay with us?
Hello?
Yes, Barrister Fred Nzako, good evening and thank you for joining me on the World News at 6 today.
Thank you. Good evening.
Yes, good evening. And also, Mr. Chukwuma Okoro, good evening and thank you for joining me on the World News at 6 this evening.
Good evening, Extra, and thanks for having me.
You're welcome. Barrister Fred Nzako, I want to start off with you as soon as possible. It's concerning the situation in the Senate where they invited the NDLEA to come and explain the reason why they said or they outed Senator Ashiru that they found out drugs in his home. Now, Senator Ashiru last week, Wednesday, called out the NDLEA about the cesspit of corruption that takes place in that particular organization. And the NDLEA now said that Senator Ashiru actually making that statement was a personal vendetta and not literally for the interest of the country. According to the NDLEA, they said it is because they had exposed him. They found drugs in his home, although the lawmaker said it doesn't belong to him, it belongs to his aide, and that the NDLEA should do a proper investigation. Now, what makes it quite interesting is the fact that the Senate questioned the NDLEA, saying that they shouldn't have called out his name if they have no evidence. That's number one. Number two, they're also saying that if they make such an utterance to one senator, it also means that they're making that utterance against all of them, and that Senator Ashiri does not even take alcohol. Now, the funny thing here is this: something fundamental happened, and instead of the Senate to actually ask for a proper investigation as soon as possible, they're literally defending the senator. What's your take on that?
You have bad judgment on the Senate when you say that you would have not defended their member. I agree with you that nobody should be defended for nothing.
Okay.
And that every citizen should be treated equally.
Okay.
Because every citizen is equal before the law. Even though I know that politically exposed people are slightly different from the rest of us. But that doesn't mean that when a citizen commits an infraction or is perceived to have committed an infraction, that the law enforcement agencies will not investigate that situation. What we are only asking for is that let such investigation be diligent and devoid of politics. Because into any action that is targeted against a politically exposed person. But that does not mean also that the agency is away from investigated senator. I do not agree with any act of intimidation against the agency by the National Assembly. Neither do I agree on any act of intimidation against the senator by the agency. What I will agree with is that there should be diligent investigation to unravel the truth behind the running battle between the senators and the NDLEA.
All right.
The fact that the senator said NDLEA is full of corruption does not mean that it is correct. He might just be making an opinion out of the fact that NDLEA is against him. And also the fact that NDLEA said that drug was found in his house does also not make it correct. Because we have seen instances where unwarranted items or prohibited items are planted in the either homes or offices of some people, which at the end of the day just in a bid to get them behind the bars. All in all, my position is that there should be bigger investigation on this matter without twisting anybody or any organization.
Mr. Chukwuma Okorie, the Senate extended an invitation to the National Drug Law Enforcement Agency to provide justification for the allegations. If this particular case was found on an ordinary individual, somebody who is not a senator, somebody who doesn't have any political office or is not in the higher realm, do you think that such a grace will be extended to the person? Do you know the immediate action of the NDLEA towards that individual, even if they haven't taken the person to court? And then secondly, the Senate having to justify that motion, what does that actually tell you?
Esther, it's very clear. It tells you that we have a Senate, a National Assembly that has turned into an entertainment show for Nigerians. Esther, I'm taken aback that in the midst of all the hardship, in the midst of the economic hardship, the decline that is affecting the whole country, what the Senate, what the National Assembly will do is to distract us with this kind of invitation about a senator who had drugs found in his house, and that man has not in any bit denied that the drug was not found in his house. He simply said that it belongs to an aide. Esther, should we be entertained with that kind of distraction?
I don't know. That's
honestly,
the thing.
Law enforcement should simply apply. I've always said it. Look, a society's stability is measured not by how it protects the rich and the wealthy, but how it treats the vulnerable. Esther, like you said, if it was an ordinary man, a common man, that the NDLEA stumbled on drugs in his house, nobody will hear it. The person will be languishing in detention.
I'm telling you, you'd have heard gunshots or you'd have heard injuries or something.
This moment. So, and let's take it back to what Senator Sumaila said last week, that the NDLEA needs to check out, sound out politicians.
Yes, I remember.
You know,
that story.
because that most of them have
drugs in their
homes,
houses.
and then they use these drugs and feed people, you know, people that they are aides, people that they are supporters and all of that. They are henchmen, people who fight, their foot soldiers during and after elections. And shortly after that, 3 days, 4 days down the line, this kind of thing is happening. And what the National Assembly, with the sitting National Assembly president, the Senate president, is doing is to invoke a motion that will invite the NDLEA
to come and justify
why somebody who is clearly a suspect, you know, should not be treated in that regard.
A suspect who admitted that indeed
that
the drug was found in his home, and he said it was his aid. How are you in the house and you don't know that there are drugs in your home?
You should simply
aid.
Simply hand over that aid to the NDLEA and let's close on that matter and move ahead. Nigerians are suffering.
That's what
Nigerians are dying.
That's what Senator Ashiru said. He said that they should go ahead and investigate. The quagmire here, or the situation here, is the fact that the Senate had to call a meeting immediately, stating that whatever is discussed in the House is not for debate, and that if at all Senator Ashiru hadn't called out the corruption in the NDLEA, that would the NDLEA disclose that they had found drug in his home. That was the defense.
It could be some kind of coincidence. It could be some kind of coincidence, but there's an alibi there. The alibi is that this man has not denied. He has not said that the drug was planted by anybody, but through espionage or whatever. He said, look, the drugs you found in my house belongs to my aide. So what are we talking about? Should it be national news? Should it take precedence over the fuel price hike? Should it take precedence over the national grid that has collapsed 229 times in 14 years? The naira that is 1,700 naira, the fare that is 1,200 naira, the 18.3 million out of school children in the whole of Nigeria. Should that found drug in a senator's house, should it take precedence over all these the malaise, the political malaise that is affecting this country? Like I said, the Senate has clearly become an entertainment circus, a circus show.
All right, Barrister Friday Zako, this next question is for you. A Lagos court has ordered the extradition and arrest of the self-styled Yoruba Nation agitator Sunday Adeyemo, also known as Sunday Igboho. This Lagos High Court, which ordered his arrest and extradition, actually disclosed that it's because of a fraud allegation against him for $420,000. Others affected by the extraction and arrest order is Wankunu Olusegun Francis, who was alleged to have conspired with Igboho to commit the alleged infractions. Justice Ambrose Lewis Alagoa, who presided over the court, made the order on Monday, sequel to an ex parte motion brought before the court by the operatives of the Forced Criminal Investigation Department, Annex Alagbon, Ikoyi, Lagos. Now, the question that is in the minds of a lot of persons is this coming because Sunday Igboho went to number 10 Downing Street in the UK to actually submit a petition asking that Yorubas should be given an opportunity to extricate themselves out of Nigeria? Because the question a lot of persons are asking is, why is this coming out now? This is the second time he'll be arrested or declared to be arrested. Barrister Fred, are you still with us?
Yes, I'm here, but I haven't read.
All right, let me try and call you back because the network is very poor. So I'll connect with you again. Hello. All right, please, Mr. Chukuma, can you respond to that?
Yes, it spikes some kind of how can I put it now? It spikes some kind of interesting coincidence again. Is it a conjunction of ugly coincidence that this thing is happening just at the time that this young man has gone to the UK? You know, he specifically wrote a letter, a petition to the Prime Minister asking him to help facilitate the exit of Yoruba Nation from the Nigerian nation. So, and shortly after that, we have a court asking the UK Nigerian government, the UK, to extradite him. I think good thing Nigeria has an extradition treaty with the
United
Kingdom. In one sense, this government is trying to play decent.
Okay, or play it safe.
Play decent, not even safe. Play decent. Considering that in 2021 we had we had a sheriff, who took laws into his hands and brought back Nnamdi, kidnapped Nnamdi Kanu, renditioned him, from which Kenya. Is translated to mean kidnap in legal terms. Some lawyers say that to rendition somebody means to kidnap the person outside the territory, where a crime was supposedly committed. So in 2021, we had a Buhari government renditioning Nnamdi Kanu and brought him back here when he was on bail. The same court, Supreme Court has said discharge this man, and they granted him. They didn't even grant him administrative bail, and the Attorney General said no. And within some hours, fresh charges,
That was the former AGF.
Yes, fresh charges were filed against him, and that is why they are still keeping this young man in detention. Like I said, this government has told a part of decency in this regard. So let's see how it plays out. It's going to be a tortuous legal process, because the extradition process is not a very easy one. Yes. That said, it's concerning that it's at this time that why didn't the court understand that this crime had supposedly been committed, before the man went to.
In fact, let me tell you, there's an order directing the police to declare the defendants, respondents, wanted by publishing their names in the Police Bulletin Gazette. In urging the court to grant the orders, Barrister Ayodele told the court that the motion for the orders was pursuant to sections 113, 114 of the Administration of Criminal Justice and Federal High Court Extradition Procedure Rules 2015 under the court's inherent jurisdiction. He also told the court that the motion was supported with affidavit of 9 paragraphs deposed to by Mohammed Usman, a chief superintendent of police who led the team that investigated the alleged crime. So they've been on this for quite a while, investigating the money, investigating those who were involved in the transaction, what the money was used, and of course they now granted the motion in the interest of justice and to enable the police arrest the defendant. So what a lot of persons feel like, this kind of coincidence just coming after just last week when we heard Sunday Igboho petition, the UK government that they wanted to extradite themselves from, to come out or have their own nation outside Nigeria. One would wonder, how long were they waiting for this?
Exactly what I said. Why is this some kind of ugly coincidence? And why at this time will the government try to megaphone the extradition process? Why didn't they allow the young man to? Did Sunday Igboho say, "I'm not coming back to Nigeria," or "I'm not coming back to Yoruba land," or is it a way of asking the young man to clearly stay away of Nigeria? Because if he's smart, he could just move over to a country that doesn't have extradition treaty with Nigeria, and it becomes Herculean. They have tried to do that. They have not approached Finland because I understand that there is no treaty between Nigeria and Finland.
I think that's the reason why that.
So do they want to ask the young man to go elsewhere? Probably where there is no treaty and stay put and not come back here to cause problem. In intelligence community, they have a way of pushing out things, to make people act or react in certain manners. So if you begin to put all of these things together, you begin to also think that, look, is the government clearly trying to play into this young man's hand so that he will move away from the scene and not distract them, because it's easier to manage him outside than when he is inside.
But what they're saying now is that the Interpol section of the 4th CID Annex, Alagbon, is working in conjunction with the Ministry of Justice to facilitate mutual legal assistance to repatriate the defendants, that's Sunday Igboho and those that were involved in this money laundering or fraudulent acts, to enable them stand trial. So if according to what you're saying, that it's easier for them to, is it right there or back here, to try them?
No, when was the crime committed?
Apparently, it was basically the crime was committed between Nigeria and another country.
So, will you try him in the UK? You'll try him here. That is one thing. And how easy has it been for the government to extradite Diziani Alison Madueke, who remains in the UK, despite the fact that Nigeria supposedly has an extradition treaty with the UK? So it's going to be a tortuous legal process, like I said. And since the High Court has issued this order, the other parties will not go to bed. They won't go to sleep. they will appeal the judgment, and the judgment will, and you know lawyers now, they will use technicalities and all of those things to ensure that the case becomes interminable for as long as, you know, they can pursue it. And they will also get a stay of execution, you know, so that you don't immediately start to execute the judgment of the lower court, of the high court, you know. So the whole thing is mixed in the politics of, you know, who is trying to outplay the other one.
And if that happens, obviously, he may not have it out like he had it the first time when he was detained in Benin Republic.
You see, the Benin Republic detention was a different ball game.
Yes, but I'm just saying that I don't think it took him 2 years before he was released, and it took the intervention of certain persons, specifically from Yoruba land or some elders, actually facilitate his release. Do we think he would get that kind of support if he is repatriated or extradited and brought back home to stand trial?
The thing is that will these people now intervene so that he is not extradited? And that when he comes back, what role will the people play? Because you clearly understand that in the event that he went to the UK to submit this petition, have you seen anybody of means from the Southwest who has condemned what he did? I think they have been very mute over it. It's not as if they are supporting it. It's not as if they are condemning it. You know, so it's like sitting on the fence. It's difficult to predict them, the direction that they are going. So are they going to give him support now, you know, to make sure they quash their extradition judgment, or that when he comes back, they will step in again as they did the other time to make sure that he regains his freedom? You know, it's a developing story. So
we'll get to see how that pans out.
You know.
All right, Barrister Fred Nzako, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Yes, Barrister Fred, the federal government has called on the Supreme Court to dismiss a lawsuit filed by 19 state governments seeking to declare the operations of the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission illegal. And I think about 3 or 4 or 5 states have withdrawn themselves from that particular case where they will declare the EFCC illegal. And that particular case was first initiated by the government of Kogi. Now, what is the coincidence that this has to do with possibly the former Kogi State Governor Yahaya Bello and him having to sponsor this situation where the EFCC would become illegal? What anti-corruption agency, financial anti-corruption agency, will now monitor most of this political elite, especially those who no longer have immunity, if they are asking for this particular institution, all right, to be declared illegal? What's your take on that?
Let me say emphatically that there is no reason to say that the argument of the state can be set aside because it was settled by a competent government. I have participated in a system where the foundation of EFCC, ICPC, National Financial Intelligence Unit, have been called to question.
Okay.
On account of their foundational form. They operate constitutional democracy, and we must do things in accordance with the provisions of our constitution. It has become very obvious, as founded by the Supreme Court, in the case between Joseph Lubik, SN, and the Federal Republic of Nigeria, that EFCC was established as a follow-up of a convention, United Nations Convention against Corruption. So it is an international treaty, and our constitution makes provision for how an international treaty will be domesticated for it to become a law. And the EFCC, being an offshoot of that international treaty, was established without following the duly laid down procedures as stipulated in Section 12 of our Constitution 1999 as amended. And that is the crux of the matter. The whole argument about whether the state will become corrupt or not, or whether corruption will override the country or not, they are all arguments in emotionalism and the sentimentalism. When we are talking about crux of the matter, we are talking about constitutional democracy. There must be a difference between democracy and military rule. The federal government cannot establish its own institution and lord it over the federative state. Otherwise, that name federal to be removed from our name. We cannot be called a Federal Republic of Nigeria only on paper. In practice and in everything we do, it must reflect that there is a center and there are federative units.
All right.
Now, the states have their National Assembly that make laws for them. Then there are laws that are made for the entire country, so according to the constitutional provision. This particular one falls short of the provisions of the Constitution. That is why the governments of 19 states now reduced to 16 are kicking against it and saying 2 things must give. Is either EFCC operates only for the federal government, or the establishment to be amended so that
but Barrister Fred Nzako, why would this lawsuit be filed in the first place? So, because if the essence of establishing the EFCC is to check financial misappropriation, specifically with the political elite. So if these 19 governors, although now they have been reduced to 16 or thereabout, decided that this was the way to go, what does that mean? Do they not want to be checked? Do they not want anybody to go after them? Because already there are blames on the EFCC that they select their cases. They don't expedite cases when it comes to those who have the political backing or who are in the executive echelon. But when it comes to the average Nigerian who is just going about their business, or those they call Yahoo boys, you need to see the raid and operations they take on. So the question that one would ask, the Supreme Court or these governors is, should it be the fact that they're filing a suit to declare the EFCC illegal, or should it be about the fact that they should declare a suit concerning the modus operandi of the EFCC in carrying out its operations?
Nobody said that EFCC should not exist. The argument is that EFCC should not exist for the state. It should exist or for the local government. It should exist for the federal government. And if EFCC Establishment Act has to cover the state, then the state input and concurrence must be secure. That is what the law says. That's what not just the law, the Constitution. That's what the Constitution says. So all these personal blackmail of EFCC doing all the work in the world. Nigeria was in existence before 2004. There were ways of fighting corruption before the EFCC was established. And if EFCC has to be alive going forward, must be alive legally, judicially, and constitutionally. If it's enjoying today, it's an illegal life that was breathed into it by the federal government without the input of the state. That is the first. And we cannot shy away. Look, we say in law that you cannot put something on nothing and expect it to stand. EFCC is standing on a quick stand. And in order to make it to stand well, to stand gidigba, the state must have their contribution in its establishment. Without such contribution, EFCC remains an illegal body.
All right, thank you, Barrister Fred Nzako. Mr. Chukwumakoro, Dr. Tony Ofeyeton, Director General of the International Institute of Professional Security, commented on the political potential of Nnamdi Kanu. Now, this is because of the situation with Sunday Igboho. A couple of Yorubas would say the federal government dare not try to extradite him or cause him any harm, otherwise they may not find the required peace that they need. Others would say we don't belong to the movement or the idea or the orientation of Sunday Igboho. He's basically fighting for himself and not necessarily representing the entirety of Yoruba land, because a couple of persons believe that now that the Southwest is in charge, anybody who through Sunday Igboho is opposing it is definitely being sponsored. Now, this particular man, Dr. Tony Ofeyeton, said that if Nnamdi Kanu is released and he campaigns for presidency, that there's a very strong tendency that he will win. He emphasized that the government's actions have inadvertently elevated Kanu to the status of a hero, particularly in the southeast region. And he argued that this unintended consequence could lead to overwhelming support for Kanu if he chooses to pursue any political role. Do you believe that?
You should have also said that the government is holding him because they don't want him to get involved in politics. And win elections. I mean, the man could have simply said that too. Esther, you see, the thing about the struggle is that if you take the context of people agreeing or disagreeing with Sunday Igboho or with Nnamdi Kanu. In the history of struggles for agitation or wherever, you discover that at no point will everybody support a single individual. Mandela had very clear opposition. Even while in prison, we had the Pan-Africanist Congress headed by Bob Sobukwe, who were clearly against the ANC. They disagreed with methods. They wanted a liberation of the black man in South Africa, but they thought, it happened in Ireland between the Sinn Féin and the ultra nationalists who believe that, look, there is no need for all these wars, between the Sinn Féin, IRA on the one side and the other parties on the other side. And even during the war, Ojukwu had dissenters. There were people who said, no, you don't go to war. You don't need to fight this war. There were Nigerians, Yoruba people, Hausas who said, no, we can't go into this war.
A couple of persons may actually argue with you, specifically in the case of Ojukwu, that he wasn't support. It was basically youthful exuberance. He refused to listen to the elders because a couple of people at the time felt that war wasn't needed.
Yes, you simply amplified my thesis. That's what I said. That they were against us, they were contrarians to that war that Ojukwu drove. In essence, what I'm trying to say is that at no point will a freedom fighter, see everybody queue behind him. And that is exactly what is happening in the case of Sunday Igboho. Some will be for, some will be against. But it depends on how the process is driven. What everybody is asking for is just impute referendum in the constitution so that people can vote to stay or to remain.
Is there a reason why that is lacking? Because we've been hearing agitations. Sunday Igboho for Yoruba Nation, Nnamdi Kanu for Biafra. Biafran call has been a very long time now.
You had Isaac Boko, Adaka Boro, the Niger Delta, who even started his own before the Nigerian Civil War.
Exactly. So what I'm just trying to say right now is that at present, the call has become quite loud, is resonating, all right, as to we want to take ourselves out of this country, the Yoruba Nation, the Biafrans and all of that. And this call has become so prominent. But we understand the peculiar nation of Nigeria as a whole. So if indeed, according to what this man is saying, that is the truth, if basically what he's saying is the truth, do we see a situation where Nnamdi Kanu will get the desired backing, or he will only get the backing from one region? Because one region cannot win the general elections.
Esther, you see, when we talk about the peculiarities of Nigeria, I don't understand what people mean when they say peculiarities of Nigeria. Nigeria is not the only peculiar country. Nigeria is not the only diverse country. Look at what happened between Sudan and South Sudan, between the Noe and the Dinkas, between Riek Machar and Silva K, who were clearly from the South Sudan, the Christian part of Sudan, that drove the agitation for over 40 years.
Yes.
In and out of war, millions of people died. At a point, the war became frozen. Okay. And after a while, when they wanted to construct the Nile, the one wanted to create a dam, that will cut off the Nile dam, and starve the headers, water and vegetation. It's the war came up again up until the time that the United States of America had to step in under the watch of late Colin Powell, and the comprehensive peace agreement was signed after a referendum was conducted, and after 6 years, South Sudan became independent.
But a lot of bloodshed actually occurred. A lot of bloodshed.
Esther, Europe you have today as a peaceful nation was a theater of war for more than 150 years. So when the agitation becomes so intense, when you close out the avenues for the resolution of disagreements, of grievances, Esther, we have been through this for the past 29 years now. We've had 3 conferences, 3 national confab.
The indigenous people's rights to self-determination under the UN Human Rights Article Charter, it's not a crime. And a couple of persons will say Shetima and Buhari supported a separate Palestine and Israel 2-state solution at the UNGA summit.
Back home, they cannot domesticate it. I mean, in 2014, the Scots voted whether to exit United Kingdom or not. The vote was turned down against people that wanted to exist. In 2016, we had Brexit. What happened? The UK exited from the EU. So why is it difficult? Some people have been asking, you don't want the Igbo nation to go. You don't want them to be fully part of you. Now, Sunday Igboho is saying we want to leave. You are starting to clamp down on him. Why don't you just put this thing? Esther, I have said it, and several people have said it. If you conduct a referendum today about Igbo exit, the result might shock a lot of people.
What about for what Sunday Igboho is
Exactly.
for? You sure?
Yes,
I'm
telling
persons
you.
will say they're not in support of what he.
That is the shock I'm talking about. That's the shock I'm talking about. Esther, do you doubt that if a referendum is conducted, majority of Igbo people will vote to remain in Nigeria? Do you know why is it that they even want to exit? Because clearly they have been marginalized over time, brazenly, and nobody disputes that. Whether you blame the governors that they are not doing local development or whatever, but everybody is in agreement that, look, all sections of the country are aggrieved in one way or the other. But the one of the South is the Igbo nation is very, very clear. It's graphically. You know, you cannot, there's no way you can hide it. It's like a smoke. You can't hide it. Look at between the Buhari administration and even this administration. Look at super highways constructed, you know, from Badagry to Sokoto, from Lagos to Calabar, and everything cuts off the southeast. And you expect the people to be happy?
Mr. Chukwuma Okomari, we've actually taken more than enough time, more than the required time. And I want to say thank you so much for this in-depth analysis, this insight, this educational background you've given us to the conversation we had this evening. Barrister Fred Nzako actually has an appearance on another television station. Barrister Fred Nzako, thank you so much for giving us your expertise, perception to the questions posed at you. I sincerely do appreciate your input. Mr. Chukwuma, thank you so much as well.
Thanks for having me, Esther.
To wrap up the world news at 6, here again are the top stories. NLC President fires President Tinubu. SDP Adebayo chastises Tinubu on economic policies. Senate summons NDLEA over clash with Senator Ashiru. Federal government takes stand on suit seeking to declare EFCC illegal. And federal government probes Gulf of Guinea as key route for arms trafficking. That's a wrap on the world news at 6. My name is Esther Wachuku. Good evening and thank you for listening.